Okay. Next name is Freddie, but they don't have
Marina.
people, just first name.
She got it.
Okay, first name.
She's supposed to be first.
Some people are here.
Christina, can you say
There's only.
Marina.
Marina.
There you go. That's what's important.
All right. Good evening, everyone. We're coming back into open session. I have the time as 6:11. Thanks to everyone who came tonight. We're going to start, as we usually do, with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I've asked Talia Harder from Sanderfell High to lead us. So please stand up and put your right hand over your heart.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Talia. Okay, next on our agenda is announcement of reportable closed session action. There was nothing reportable. The next thing I'm looking for is an approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the agenda.
Moved by Vice President Martel Bell, seconded by Trustee Martine. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The agenda is approved. Next on the agenda is our superintendent has an adoption of resolution 2223-26, recognizing February as Black History Month. Superintendent
Good
Hogaboom.
evening, everybody. So, yes, this resolution is to recognize Black History Month for February of 2023. I'm not going to read the whole resolution, but excuse me, I will read a few parts of it. Whereas in 1976, Black History Month was officially recognized by the federal government to honor and recognize the struggle and achievements of African Americans to our national life and culture. And whereas August 2019 marked 400 years since the first arrival of Africans to present-day America, and the United States Congress established the 400 Years of African American History Commission to commemorate the historic heritage and active contributions that Americans of African descent have made to help shape the cultural, academic, social, economic, and moral attributes of this nation. And whereas, in spite of the African slave trade that created an institution of white supremacy in this nation, Africans and African Americans have nonetheless continued to persevere and move forward in society, fighting for their freedom and also for the freedom of all Americans over time. Now, therefore, be resolved that the Sanderfell City Schools Board of Education does hereby adopt this resolution to honor Black History Month and recognizes the tremendous contributions made by African Americans and encourages all schools to commemorate this occasion both now and throughout the school year with the appropriate instructional materials.
Thank you, Superintendent. Do any trustees have any comments to make before I look for a motion? Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Trustee Martine, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Trustee Martine, seconded by Trustee Palma. All those in favor of approving the resolution 2223-26, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes. Next on our agenda is presentations. Again, our superintendent, and this is a fun one, the Heart of Marin Student Awards.
Yes, awesome. So a great opportunity tonight to recognize some of our students and little students. So recently we held on January 12th, the Center for Volunteer and Nonprofit Leadership held their 30th annual Heart of Marin's Awards ceremony. The award ceremony was attended by over 500 Marin leaders, including elected officials, businesses, employers, and nonprofits in Marin. The Youth Volunteer of the Year Award recognizes 5 middle or high school students serving in a Marin nonprofit, education, or faith environment. We're proud that 4 of the 14 nominated youth were Sanderfell City School students, and 2 were selected as the recipients. So there were 2 award nominees. Melissa Gongora, who's here from Sanderfell High School. She was nominated by Heads Up. She has been the student board rep for Heads Up. She has also represented the Wellness Center. She's worked really hard on the carnival, and she's also a member of AVID. So Melissa, we have a little plant for you. The next person, not sure if she's with us, is Jada Swan from Terra Linda High School. She was nominated by Project Awareness and Special Sports and the Friendship Club of Terra Linda. So give her a big round of applause.
I've seen, I think, 2 of her family members, but I'm not sure if Jada wants to raise her hand. I can bring her over. And then we can circle back to her, but I believe, I don't know if it's her family members or herself that's on Zoom.
Awesome, thank you, thank you. And then 2 of the nominees, is she there?
Yeah.
You wanna beam her in?
It's one. She's coming up.
You wanna come back?
Just a moment.
Thank you. Hi.
Congratulations, Jada. Thanks for all your time and volunteer efforts. And we have some plants here and I'll bring it over to Terra Linda High School for you tomorrow.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you.
All right, and then we have 2 other nominees who were selected as the award recipients. So the first one who is sitting there on Zoom is Mateo Diaz from Santa Fe High School nominated. Well, over the last few years, certainly an amazing advocate on behalf of students. He's a member of SPAR's Youth Advocacy Coalition. He helped organize and produce Queer Prom, a dance and social event open to all LGBTQ teens and allies. He began working with our district on the issue of lack of all gender restrooms on campuses, specifically Santa Fe High School. He was instrumental in bringing together district administrators, teachers, transgender and non-binary students, and SPAR reps for a meeting. There are now 10 all-gender restrooms on the campus, each stocked with menstrual products and open to every student. Along with a coalition of peers, including Talia, he has created a list of action steps that every district should take to make their schools safe and inclusive for queer and trans students. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Hogeboom, and everyone else at the district who made the all gender restroom project possible. We couldn't have done it without all of your help and your support. So I'm really excited about the bathrooms and that we were able to accomplish that for all the students at SR. So thank you.
Please, Talia Harder from Santa Fe High School, former student board rep. Congratulations. He was nominated by the amazing county superintendent, Mary Jane Burke, who just retired. Talia's significant efforts led to the Mental Health Services Oversight and Accountability Commission granting funding for a 42-month student wellness ambassadors program for Marin County Behavioral Health and Recovery Services and Marin County Office of Education. Last year, MCOE held a youth-led community meeting in response to the fentanyl crisis. Talia was a panelist that advocated for more wellness resources at schools, and she is now the lead for the countywide Youth Wellness Action Team developing a comprehensive resource guide. Through her work for numerous agencies, Talia embodies the collective impact approach in service to all students. Congratulations.
Okay, I mean, it's hard to follow that up, but if I can think of one principal and amazing administrative team who can, is Mr. Q with Benicia Valley. So come on up.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Hogeboom, and a special thank you to all of our amazing teachers that are here today. I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to our assistant principal, Mrs. Ben Chavez, who's gonna kick us off, and then I'll come back.
Right. Buenas noches, Presidente Daly, miembros de la mesa directiva y Superintendente Hogeboom. Yo soy Laura Chávez, la subdirectora en Benicia Valley, y esta noche voy a hablar sobre nuestro programa. So I am Lauren Chavez. Good evening, President Daly, members of the Board of Directors, and Superintendent Hogeboom. I want to make sure to say hello to everybody in both languages because of our dual language program and the value that we give to multilingual learners in our district. All right. Two things that we're super excited about this year. One is the expansion of our dual language immersion program. This year, we're able to serve more students and both English and Spanish speaking students because we've been able to open up 2 classes in our kindergarten, 2 in our first grade, and 1 in TK. Another change that we're really excited about in our elementary school is our universal intervention program. So kindergarten through 3rd grade, we're identifying needs in terms of phonics for our students. We're putting together phonics groups by need and by language. And then students are going around to the classroom where they can get instruction at their level. So that's something that we're doing because we always need to make sure that we're addressing gaps in our students, but particularly right now, with all of the changes that have happened over the last several years, it seems absolutely crucial for our students. Right. So I'm going to talk about who we are. At Benicia Valley, if you don't know, we're 86% Latino, 8% are Caucasian, and the other about 6% are other races. In our population, 65% of our students are ELs. Over 80% speak a language other than English at home. And we have a great staff who is well prepared to meet the needs of those students, both through using SEAL strategies, oral language development through AVID. We have a lot of professional development so that our teachers are using the language their students have to help them develop out their English proficiency. Something that we love and we'd love for you to come see is our special education students. 13% of our students are in special education. And part of the reason for that is we have 3 special day classes, TK through 2nd, 3rd through 5th, and middle school. And then we also have an MCOE, mild to moderate disabilities class. And the thing that is wonderful about these classes is the kids are really integrated into our school and we get to see them for 9 years often. So we have a great set of teachers. Our kids really understand how to treat people with differences, how to build understanding and build up their abilities as an ally, which is one thing that we really value at the school. So if you ever want to come by and check it out, that would be great. One other thing to note, we're a Title I school. 88% of our students are socioeconomically disadvantaged, and our homeless and transitional housing population is 12%. So we know that students come in facing challenges to getting an education that we must address if we're really going to close the opportunity gap, which takes us to what we do as a school and what we believe in. So as a school, I really believe in this vision statement of being a community school where the students, the families, and the staff are all already celebrated for who they are, and they're supported to be all that they can be. And so the really important part of what we do is we have to make sure that everyone comes into our school knowing that we value them, that they are good, and that they're a valuable part of our community. And we're also going to do everything we can to make sure that they have what they need to reach whatever goals they have for themselves, and that we want to make sure that we support them as a school community to make sure that their academic and social emotional needs are met. So a few ways that we do that, our school community works with some community-based organizations. We do work with Heads Up, Youth and Arts, Marin Shakespeare Company. We have a great connection with the JCC and some of the surrounding schools where we have students come over to tutor our kids, which we love. And we've also had some very understanding neighbors as we have amazing upgrades and the construction, which we've finally gotten through with some good communication with our neighbors. It's really made for an outstanding facilities for the kids. Our staff, we're very proud to say that we have the most diverse staff in San Rafael City Schools. Many of our teachers are bilingual, bicultural, we really feel that that representation matters to our kids. Seeing people who look like them and speak language fluency and are great language models in our bilingual program is very important to us and something that we take into consideration when hiring, and we do all we can to make sure we retain those teachers. We have a tremendous family center who Mr. Q will talk about in a bit. They do a wonderful job connecting people to resources in the community because we know it's more than just what we teach you. It's all the things around getting you ready for that day of school and getting you everything that you need. And then absolutely most importantly, our students and families. We have a diverse group of students at our school, and we have to look at them as individuals and see, who are you? What is the strength you have? What can we do to get you the things that we need? Because everyone brings value to our school, and that is something that we're very good at. We can look at the situation and the kids and identify what needs to happen so that they have what they deserve, which is a great high quality education. I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Q to talk about our goals.
Thank you, Mrs. Menchavez. So we're going to talk about our goals, which you've probably been hearing as you've been holding our meetings and having principals come forward, all aligned to the goals that we have under our Together 2024. So talking about multi-tiered systems of support, supporting our English learners and culturally relevant teaching practices. And I'm going to focus only on MTSS for tonight. In the words of Woodrow Wilson, right? We want to be brief, be brilliant, and be gone. All right. So we're going to try to do that for you this evening. So as you all know, we have some very intentional goals that we want to provide equitable systems for all of our students. And some of the things that we can talk about specifically at Benicia Valley, as you saw our demographics, we want to focus on restorative practices, something that we've been doing, and this has been happening TK through 8. Our elementary folks have been implementing our second step curriculum. It's something that we are providing support through our counselors to work with our teachers, to have the lessons done in the classroom, teaching kids about empathy, teaching kids about being kind, very important. In our middle grades, we also have 2 designated advisory periods on Mondays and Fridays, where one of those periods is dedicated specifically to a second step lesson, while the other day is designated to a community or restorative circle. We want to make sure that we're doing that. As you heard from Mrs. Menchavez, not only do we want our students to be academically ready, we also want them to be good citizens. We want them to be productive. Professional development for all of our staff has been ongoing, continues to happen. We've been fortunate to partner with Mr. Don, oh my gosh, Carney, there we go, right? Transforming youth justice, right? And so they have been so instrumental in bringing a team into the school, and these individuals work directly with our teachers. They also help the teachers in either leading, facilitating, or coaching on how they're doing when they're implementing the SEL curriculum. We're going to continue to address our chronic absenteeism. One of the things that not only we see in the district, but the state of California and really in the US, where after the pandemic, for whatever reason, we still have a couple of families that are a little bit hesitant to send their kids to school. Fortunately, our middle grades have been doing exceptional, leading the district with nearly 98% attendance rate, which is great. We're super proud of them for doing that. And we want our elementary to mimic that. Right now, we're at about 93% for elementary, and we're trying to understand, you send the older ones, but not the younger ones. What's going on? So we want to make sure that we're mimicking that. Part of the things that we do there for the absenteeism is the use of our family center and our community liaison, which I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about. So let's just continue going here about our restorative practices. As you saw here, I talked about youth transforming justice, the work that we've been doing there. Our middle grades team has also been attending Dr. Lori Watson's culturally responsive teaching. This is important to us because we want to make sure that we are providing an experience for students as diverse as the students we have in not only San Rafael City Schools, but also at Benicia Valley, an experience that is reflective of them, that respects and honors our cultures that we see everywhere. Unfortunately, on the way here, was watching a little clip on the news about the Florida governor who has now banned African American studies, an AP course, right? And I just count our blessings as to how lucky we are to live in the state of California and in San Rafael, Marin County, where we would hopefully never see something like that, right? And so, this is something important for us, and we want to make sure that we continue this work. It was something that was brought on to us by Tyler. Tyler, thank you for bringing Dr. Watson to work with us. I know it started for the high school district, and when he expanded that to the middle grades, we were quick to get there. And fortunately, our team has been really good about attending that. And then they bring that information back so that we can implement what we've learned and move forward. The school-wide implementation process of restorative practices and second step, I talked to you about that, the elementary implementation that's going on, and also the advisory schedules that we have. So it looks like I kind of shared a little more than I wanted to from the last slide, but we're here, it's okay. The full service family center, I can tell you, without this group of people, we would have our hands full more than what we do now. And we have an amazing team of dedicated professionals who operate the family center and work with our families to the point where I think one of our families shared and probably put it the best about a week ago and said, you know, it doesn't really feel like it's school anymore, does it? It seems like we're a social service agency and then we provide you a book. And it's like, kind of, you know, if you think about it, because if we're not meeting our students' basic needs, they're not going to sit in the class wanting to learn, right? And so super important to have our family center. And I know that this is some of the work that San Rafael City Schools is moving towards our community schools, our community partnership schools model that we plan on integrating. But we're also one of the only schools in the district that offers a weekly food bank every Tuesday after school from 3:30 till about 5 o'clock or until all supplies are gone. And it's a drive-up food bank that is still running strong. And it doesn't matter if we're on break, if we're on winter break, whatever, our dedicated people still come in to run that. And so we're super happy for that. And then, of course, the collaboration that the Family Center has with our attendance office, where we're doing home visits. We have our Family Center director who transports kids from Richmond all the way to school to make sure that those kids are there daily in their class. We have just, I can't talk enough about them as to how great they are in the work that they do. We were at the school till about 8 o'clock a couple of weeks ago, dealing with something very similar where the commitment and the support of ensuring that the kids are fed, that they get what they need, they have the materials that they need, while supporting the family, ensuring that they have housing, even if it's temporary housing. That is very important to us, and we're super appreciative of the work that they do, and we continue to support them. All right, so those are that's the information that we have for you. We could keep going on and on, but unlike my colleague, Mr. Stachin, who went on here for like 30 minutes, I saw the last time, I said, I need to kill it quick. So here we are, we're available for questions for you.
That's me, Joseph. That was when I was presiding the meeting last.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Does the board have any questions?
I'll just start off. I think what you're doing is marvelous. Yeah, I've been to back to school nights and your open houses, and your facility is to die for, and your families are so proud and so happy. So I'll start out there. A question about the food banks. So I think it'd be really helpful to know when those are. I'd love to come by and visit. We used to have them at a lot more of our schools, and that may be happening as things open up, but I'd love to just sort of see how that works. I know it's on a volunteer base. Everyone's helping make that happen. It's not like teachers and you are doing it. It's the parents are doing it. So
That's
it's an
correct. It's our
amazing
parents and
program.
our family center.
Yeah, it's the epitome of a community school kind of effort on that.
That's right.
And then the other question I have is, you know, we have like 86% ELs at Venetia Valley, and that number's really gone up. Are you seeing a demographic change in the neighborhood in in Santa Venetia, that we have more people coming in?
So just a quick correction, we have about 60% ELs,
Okay,
86% or so that come in speaking a language
Got it.
other than English.
okay.
Yes.
But I'm just curious about the demographics of Santa Venetia and the neighborhood that you're the school for, and are you seeing that? And is it all Spanish, or are there other languages starting to come in as well?
Most of our students are Spanish speaking. We do have a couple of Ukrainian students. And we also have some other languages that are represented. But overall, for the most part, it is Spanish speaking. The other interesting piece is there's a great percentage of our students that actually don't live in the Santa Venetia neighborhood. So they are coming from other parts of the city.
That's right. Well, Santa Venetia is always, Venetia Valley has always been a welcoming school to anybody wherever they came from. And so really kind of excited to hear about the Ukrainian aspect.
Yes.
And just to know that you're a great place for families to land in and to have their kids educated.
Well, I was just gonna say, I really appreciate just like the headlines of what you're saying is that you value the families and the students of how they show up and you see them as individuals. And I remember when I first took this seat, I went to the high school graduation for San Rafael and this wonderful young lady spoke and she said, our school sometimes is our second home and we really want to feel seen and valued. So thank you for doing that and thank you for doing the great work.
Okay, I'm next. I'll give you the Spanish part. Well, after all.
Yeah.
yes, if I
Claro
go
que
to
sí.
see- Tengo entendido que la lectura y el inglés es a donde más están fallando los niños. Aparte de esto, yo estoy muy feliz de todo lo que ustedes hacen y más que todo con Pilar que trabaja para ustedes. Pero, ¿qué están haciendo? ¿Cómo están trabajando ustedes para ayudar a estos niños?
¿Quiere que le responda en español?
Díganos en
We
inglés.
actually have Spanish translation
Yeah.
tonight, so for those that are listening online, they're getting a translation right now. So,
Excellent.
yes.
Excellent. The question is, we understand, we recognize that reading and speaking English seems to be the area and where children are performing the lowest. However, we appreciate everything you're doing at the school. I'm just kind of.
No, you're doing right. You're doing perfect.
Okay. So what are we doing? ¿Qué es lo que estamos haciendo? Una cosa que nos enfocamos este año escolar, vimos que varios de nuestros niños, más bien los niños en los grados primarios, requieren más intervención en la área de lectura. Y vimos nuestro horario y entonces encontramos horas donde los niños pueden salir de sus clases y recibir su intervención con una maestra, ¿verdad? De alta profesionalidad para que se enfoque en las áreas donde los niños necesitan el apoyo. Entonces, es posible que un niño de primer grado puede estar con un grupo de niños de primer grado, tal vez hasta con unos cuantos niños de kinder que necesitan ese nivel de apoyo. O puede haber un niño de primer grado que está yendo a una clase con otros niños de segundo grado porque va más avanzado. Entonces, queremos utilizar los datos que tenemos disponibles para asegurar de que los niños están recibiendo exactamente lo que necesitan. Y hemos visto que lo que nos dicen los profesionales, ¿verdad? Todo el mundo científico, como se dice, que un mínimo de 25, 30 minutos de intervención diario es suficiente para ayudar a los niños a aumentar. Y entonces es lo que estamos haciendo diario para nuestros niños.
25 minutos.
20 a 30 minutos es la norma, así es, pero tiene que ser intensivo y es lo que nos estamos enfocando en eso. Acabamos el viernes de celebrar a nuestros niños que acaban de tomar su prueba y tenemos niños que aumentaron de más de 100 puntos que fueron conocidos como tener éxito en su prueba de lectura. Tenemos unos niños que hasta llegaron más de 400 puntos que empezaron al principio menos de 100 puntos cuando tomaron la prueba. Entonces, esto es algo que estamos muy orgullosos de eso. Ese es el bloque de intervención que habló la señora Chávez al principio y por eso estamos muy orgullosos de ese programa.
Muchas gracias.
Sí.
Bien claro. Felicidades.
Very quickly in English? Yes, or we need it?
Do we need it?
They're good.
I
All
actually,
right,
I actually
excellent.
followed that.
You did
I
too.
speak French, but I followed it.
You can go ahead and say it quickly in English.
Okay.
Yes, so we're, one of the points that our assistant principal, Ms. Machado, talked about was our intervention block. That was one of the things that we noticed our students needed a lot of support in terms of reading, phonics, and ensuring that they're getting the support that they need. So we looked at our master schedule and we created a block specifically for targeted intervention services for our students. And just last Friday, we celebrated our students, which we tweeted, if you haven't followed me, Principal Hawkey, we tweeted the results. Students that earned more than 100 points on their SRI scores. And we had some kids reach as far as 400 points in gain since the last time they took their assessment. And we're going to continue to do that. We have our next one in March. We'll be sure to invite you all to join us for that celebration.
Vice President Marcel, you have anything to add?
No, you know that this is a school that I appreciate because it's in my district, but not solely for that only reason, but also because you all do a great job. And I'll see you on Thursday because I'll be there in our TK orientation. So I'm very excited and looking forward to seeing you all again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just want to acknowledge all the hard work you guys have done, especially with the implementation of the dual immersion program and the success that has had. I think it's really a model program, and I know that there's many of us in the board that would love to see that replicated in other schools because you guys have shown that it's possible. And I think a huge part of that success has been making sure we have the right teachers and the right support structures to make that happen. So just appreciation for all your hard work, and I'm happy that our vice president will be able to be there to welcome some new families to the Benicia Valley community on Thursday. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you also for asking the question in Spanish. And I think it's really important to honor
Part of it.
the fact that, you know, over 60% of our students speak Spanish at home. So we should be honoring that as much as possible. So thank you so much for being here tonight. Right, thank you so much. The next item on the agenda is our announcements. And I'm gonna start with our board trustees. We're gonna go around the horn. So Trustee Jackson, please
Okay.
begin.
Thank you. So I went to a couple of teacher leadership meetings this month, or these last 2 weeks. One, I'm most exciting about looking at our grading practices, not necessarily revision of our grading policies, but in light of our equity audit of a few years ago and the impact that grades can have on the success of our students. So, and it was fascinating to be in the room with our teacher leaders grappling with this topic and thinking about how to move it forward. I went to the JLAC meeting, but I'll let our President Daly talk about that, which is our Joint Legislative Action Committee of School Board Trustees in Marin County, and to hear a report about what's happening in Sacramento, JLAC. And the last one is going to a community schools meeting with many of our best friends in the county. We got this big grant, and so the idea is, how are we going to spend this money for the benefit of working with the community for the benefit of our students? And I shared my concerns with Jim about our superintendent, that some of the groups that actually do the joy, which are sports and music and theater and arts, are not there. And so I encourage that they be included, because that's what brings that joy part of our value into the classroom with our partners. And the other one is that that we have a real community partnership at the heart of what we do with this grant. So I'm looking forward to, we got one more meeting with this group, and you would have known probably almost everybody in the room, because we have key leaders from our partners in the county. That's my report.
That's great. Thank you, Trustee Jackson. Trustee Martine.
Yes, thank you. So I did attend the Heads Up retreats with Jim Hogaboon, our superintendent. Also, I will let Gina talk about our partnership with Amy Bear and also the superintendent search. I attended our Glenwood music event that happened last week. Also the Parent Advisory Council with our superintendent, and also our San Rafael High School basketball game that just happened on Saturday, and it was a fighter to the end. And just a reminder, our San Rafael Little League represents all of our schools, and enrollment is open up until the beginning of February, and we have scholarships for that. So it's been a busy 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Palma.
Trustee Palma, good evening, everyone. First, I'd like to acknowledge all those emails that I received from parents and teachers and it is important for me that we all get in the same, we all come to an agreement because it is clear to me that we all have this something in common, and that is the education of all of our children. So hopefully that should be on its way to get resolved. As a board trustee, I've been talking to the community, and parents are concerned about their children's grades, failing mainly in math and English. So that is something that has been going on for years. Now that they see me more as a volunteer in the community and they know that I'm a trustee, they actually let me know, what can I do? And this is a conversation that I'm gonna have with the board or with Jim and see how to approach this. I mean, what should I tell them? I can't promise anything, but this is something that we all really need to work on. Nothing else to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Palma. Vice President Martel Dow.
Thank you, President Daly. I don't have much to report in terms of school business, but just as Trustee Palma just acknowledged, I think I can say that we have all received and read many of the comments from the community and parents and teachers. Like I said last week, we should acknowledge that, and so they know that we have our ear. So thank you.
Thank you, and I'll speak briefly. So I also had many emails and phone calls to me regarding the contract negotiations right now. I did my best to respond to everyone who did actually send me an email letting them know that I did receive it, because I know it can sometimes feel like you're sending something into the void and you have no idea if there's a human on the other end. There was a human, there were humans.
Oh.
Okay, a couple things that have been mentioned already that I'll briefly talk a little bit more about. So JLAC, the Joint Legislative Action Committee, we had our meeting on the 11th. I'm co-chairing the group this year. We received an update about the governor's first budget request. He'll have a May revise based on how the tax receipts are actually looking. But the good news is that even though we are projecting deficits, for the most part, education is pretty well protected as of right now. So we're keeping our eye on it. And in fact, we're going to Sacramento at the very last day of February, to take this message of needing support from our state directly to our legislators. So I'm very excited about that day. It's the first time we'll be back in person since COVID. It's really time for us all to come together all throughout Marin County to do that work. I also had a meeting with the Capital Improvements Committee, talking about all of our bond programs, the finishing of our bond projects right now. Those of you that drove in saw the beautiful TL gym and the frontage road that just got finished. Very exciting work and very exciting things down the pike in terms of the next bond. And thank you again to the voters for approving that. You have no idea how lucky we have it here. I talked to people all over the state. We are the envy of so many because we actually have the money from our voters to be able to have world-class facilities. Along with Trustee Martine and Amy Bear, we had a number of meetings for the superintendent search. This is not a secret. Jim, unfortunately, is leaving us to retire at the end of this academic year. And so it is our job to try to find a replacement. So we've had a number of meetings and we have hired a firm to do the search. And so I think we're trying to move that along as well as we can so we get the best possible pool of applicants. And then finally, earlier today, I was part of a Shark Tank-like panel for the Marin Cell. So I got to listen to two proposals from students at Terra Linda High who had wonderful eco-business ideas and be able to provide some feedback. So that was a lot of fun. Although we were much nicer than Shark Tank, if you ever watched that show. I'm going to go to the superintendent now.
Thank you. You guys hit most everything. So I'm just going to point out the amazing artwork in the room. So I'm always amazed that the back is provided by Santa Fe High, and you look at that, the artwork back of our students is just spectacular. Especially since I couldn't draw a stick figure, but it's really, really great. So thanks to Santa Fe High, and up here we're from Benicia Valley. So just wanted to point out the artwork and how amazing our students are. That's all. Thank you.
I concur that our students are amazing. Speaking of amazing students, I would love to turn it over to our student board reps, and Jacqueline, if you would like to begin from Davidson Middle School, anything to report from Davidson?
Yeah, I apologize for not being here for the last meeting, but during December, we had our Spirit Week and pep rally with games for the students to participate. Many students got on the honor roll from the last semester, and we finished our MAP assessments from math and English. The band, orchestra, and choir have been practicing to perform for the new fifth graders, and Dweb is very excited to tour the students for the fifth grade orientation.
Thanks so much for your report. Tess, how are things at Terra Linda High?
Things are good. In terms of staff and faculty stuff, Dominican College is offering an AP Summer Institutes this coming summer, which teachers are encouraged to participate in. That's really exciting. Terra Linda is gearing up for testing, which is coming up. So the LPAC, which is the language assessment for our English learners, will be happening. Our juniors will be taking their SBAC, which is focused on math and science. And our seniors will be taking the CA science test, the California science test. Testing will begin in March, and faculty is planning and preparing for that, along with providing teachers and staff with training for that. Excitingly for our students, Terra Linda courses are actually aligned with these tests, so there's going to be no additional preparation needed. They can just roll straight from their classes into the tests, which is great. And while I'm on the topic of tests, AP testing begins in May, and there's a lot of planning needed for that, including more teacher professional development and stuff like that. This week is a Spirit Week for winter formal, or next week is a Spirit Week for winter formal. We have winter formal on Friday. Wait, no, it is this week. I don't know what I'm talking about. And today, people came to school in pajamas. There'll be beanie days. There'll be whiteout days. We're gonna have a great time, and we're very excited for our first dance in the new gym. Last week, Wednesday, Terra Linda and San Rafael High School teachers worked together to align their curriculum and develop the proficiency scales, which is really exciting. And instructional coaches will work with departments to put those scales into practice in the coming weeks and revise and refine them. I can't believe it's already this time of year, but our counselors have been visiting middle schools and starting the process of talking to 8th graders about enrolling and registration for classes. Our AVID students have also been reaching out to middle schools and talking about the application process for that. And our Marin School of Environmental Leadership applications were due this January. So all of that will be rolling in as the year progresses. Our teacher librarian, Miss Rose, is teaching an ROP Intro to Careers class, which started 2 weeks ago. Careers specifically in education, not just teaching, but everything that goes into running a district. And finally, a big congratulations to Mr. Baker and his students for finishing first in a national economic competition.
Wow.
Let's hear from our labor partners. Do we have CSEA?
There might be some individuals online if they could raise their hand. I'm not sure for the union, again for the union. So I know it's like we have Brianna and SRFT, Lisa.
Okay, why don't we go to Brianna first, and then we'll see if CSEA joins us. But let's start with Brianna.
All right, she's on her way over.
Hi, everybody. I unfortunately am home with a wonderful cold. I'd rather be there with everybody, but I'm here instead. Good evening, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Hogaboom, staff, students, and community members. I am Brianna Padilla, the president of San Rafael Teachers Association, the union that represents educators from the TK through 8 elementary school district. And this evening you have you have heard from and will be hearing from a few of our San Rafael community members who are in support of our San Rafael City Schools elementary teachers in the current negotiations with the district. And in addition to those that you'll hear from this evening, as you've mentioned earlier this evening, you've received numerous emails from parents, volunteers, and other supporters of our public schools. So thank you very much for acknowledging those emails and for those that you have responded to already. We greatly appreciate that. And these community members really want you to know that attracting and retaining teachers in our elementary and middle schools here in San Rafael matters, and that it really matters to our students. It matters most to our students who deserve the best educators. So SRTA and SRCS now have dates scheduled for mediation on February 13th and the 15th, where we are extremely hopeful for positive communication, collaboration with everyone, and ultimately an agreement that supports the educators who are in front of our students every day. So thank you. That's it for SRTA.
Thank you, Brianna. And let's go to Lisa with SRFT.
Good evening. Hi, guys. My name is Lisa Crawford, and I'm the secretary of the San Rafael Federation of Teachers, and I'm here to give that SRFT report. Today was Pajama Day. I don't know if you guys can see. It is one of my favorite spirit days of the year. Every Pajama Day I'm in it, and it felt really good to be cozy and silly with the students after what was the start of a semester in which we were surrounded with tragedy and loss and a sense of uncertainty, right, due to the power outages for many of our staff and students. I personally came to work for 3 days in what I called no power, no shower attire. I didn't have power on 3 separate days and got ready by candlelight. But we have now adjusted. And today, Pajama Day was bright and sunny, and I feel like TL, we're feeling good and full of spirit. SRFT would like to thank the district and San Rafael High School leadership for the improved custodial service at SR High School. It's really vital to student morale that they feel that they're in a clean and well-organized space, that people care about the environment where they are. And we understand how hard it is to get the right personnel in the right position, especially in this economy and climate. And it is appreciated that the custodial staff has improved conditions at SR High. As a TL teacher, I'd like to take a moment to thank our stellar custodial staff, because I get to work with them every day and they are awesome and they do a lot to keep us up and running. SRFT would also like to share how excited we are to work with Dan Zeisch to be able to give input on the second bond measure. That's exciting. The first thing we did with the last bond measure was to put in air conditioning in the classrooms, and that has made a huge impact on day-to-day with our students. And we look forward to identifying similar high yield, high priority projects for the second bond. SRFT would also like to thank the board for their continued service. And we are here to support our labor partners. And we are feeling good after a rocky start. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Lisa. And have we seen CSEA?
Seen none.
Okay, just want to make sure we didn't miss it. Thank you, everyone. And so now we're going to move on to public comment on non-agendized items. I just want to remind everyone that unfortunately, when we hear public comment, we are not allowed to respond. So it's not that we're not listening or don't have thoughts about the things that you are saying. We are not allowed to respond because it is not on the agenda. So just want to remind everyone of that. We also have board policy that each comment should be kept to 3 minutes or under, just to make sure that we have everyone's voice heard. Before we get started, and I have one blue slip and one person gave public comment ahead of time. If there's something you would like to say, it will go to the room first after I read this one comment. And then if anyone is online, please use the raise hand function and Christina will call on you after. But I'm trying to make sure we hear from everyone, because I know there's a lot of folks today that want to have their voices be heard. So with that, I'm going to read the public comment that we received ahead of time. Dear members of the SRCS Board of Education, Superintendent Hogaboom, as I understand it, contract negotiations between SRCS and SRTA educators are ongoing. It is also my understanding that their current contract has not given them a raise since July 2021. Our child is enrolled at Coleman Elementary School, where he attends 4th grade and has been since kindergarten. We continue to value the professionalism of the caring and highly competent staff at Coleman, and it is essential community-wide across the district that you retain skilled educators capable of maintaining safe, secure, and positive, engaging learning environments that prioritize our children's well-being, academic progress, and their development as young members of this community. The compensation offered to our teachers is not adequate, and pay must be made competitive if we are to retain and attract the qualified educators we need in San Rafael City Schools. We ask that you compensate the staff for their contributions as highly valuable district employees whose expertise and commitment is indispensable. Less than a 14% increase in wages for our teachers at this time is not acceptable. Public educators have been historically undercompensated as professionals, and especially in these times of economic uncertainty, we need to ensure that they receive the deserved compensation. Thank you for your time. With kind regards, Jennifer Arcuni. I have Ann Levinson here. Oh yeah, please. Okay, so I have Ann Levinson. And then if there's anyone else that would like to speak, please feel free to stand up after Ann is finished. Go ahead.
I've actually never done this before, so hello, good evening. My name is Ann Levinson. I'm a San Rafael resident and a mom of two. I have one, my oldest is at Coleman Elementary School and my second is in preschool. So I am highly dedicated to the success of San Rafael Public Schools because both of my kids are entering and will be going through for a very long time. I think all of us in this room can agree that school is one of the most critical touch points our kids will ever have as they grow and learn and prepare to be successful adults who will contribute to society. It is vital that we provide the absolute best for our children. And we can't do that if we aren't adequately investing in our teachers. I'm confident that I speak for many, if not all of our parents, when I say that we expect this board to ensure that San Rafael schools are and remain the best they possibly can be, and that they remain highly desirable so we can attract the best talent and retain the best talent. Obviously, there are several factors that go into excellent schools and strong academic achievement and student success, but the very first, the very most basic is financial compensation for our teachers. If we aren't keeping pace with other school districts, we will lose our strong teachers and we will miss out on recruiting the best teachers in the future. As a parent with current students and future students, I implore you to invest in our students now and in their futures. Thank you.
Anybody else in the room wish to make a public comment? If not, I'll just acknowledge that we have a number of people in the audience wearing red. Just a report from my eyeballs, that's all I'm doing. Christina, do we have anyone online that would wish us to make a comment?
Not at this time, but again, if you would like to make a comment, please use the raise hand feature.
Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to staff reports. The first report is from Education Services. It's an update on Together 2024-04, which is systems and structures and multi-tiered system of support. So assuming it's just getting exciting, guys.
Why are you leaving?
I feel like I need to make a joke about you guys being able to clear a room.
I wish I had written down a Polonar's Woodrow Wilson quote, because I feel like that was kind of directed at its services and our Instagram, and it would
Don't
be
take it
brief.
personally, I'm just saying.
There we go. Yeah, I'm just saying.
Thank you.
God.
It's a school night. We understand.
What's that like? Na 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 na. You know. We won't. Okay. We actually Venetia Valley's presentation was a really good lead into the conversation
great.
we're gonna have tonight. We didn't set that up, and I think it's a really great reflection of how Together 2024 has really been a way for us to come together, for Covenant to come together, for our community and our schools to all be on the same page. And so tonight we're gonna talk about two parts of MTSS. I'm gonna do a very brief introduction, define MTSS, because it's really important that we're all using that term in the same way. And then we will have Susan talk about behavioral MTSS, and then Tara and I will do a very brief academic one, because we've talked a lot about that. And a lot of time for questions. Can we have the next slide?
You can
Oh,
try to use.
Okay.
No,
No, we're good.
No,
Okay, so real briefly, this is where it is in Together 2024. This is under systems and structures. And it is really important. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about the content, but the core of MTSS is actually how are we using a system to better support our kids. Okay, so tonight's going to focus a lot on the system. This is our goals, many goals and many actions. And we're going to zoom in on a few of these tonight, okay? And more. And again, please do ask questions, but this encompasses, there's a lot under here and a lot that you're gonna find referenced. So we'll talk about intervention teachers, we'll talk about counselors, we'll talk about cost. You've heard a lot of times, this is where it's embedded in Together 2024. Okay, and I do wanna take a moment to define MTSS or multi-tiered systems of support. This term has been around for a long time. And it's thrown out in a lot of ways, and just making sure that we're all on the same page about how we're using this, and this is pretty standard. And what MTSS is it's really a framework for how we think about the services we provide our kids. So what we're saying is that for most students, and what the research has said, for most students, 80 to 90% of students, if we do kind of core instruction, we've said these are the important things to teach, social, emotionally, academically. For most of our students, that will be enough to keep them on grade level, learning on grade level and being successful at school. There's another group of students, again, this is tier 2, but it's generally speaking 5 to 15% of students. They're gonna need more than that. And that more looks different ways, and that's a lot of the work we're gonna talk about tonight, but they're gonna need more. It might be social emotional support or behavioral support, additional family support. It may also be targeted intervention that happens in the classroom for academics and or outside, right? And then tier 3 generally is students who need more substantial. This is often where you see our special education services come in, especially when it comes to academics and or really targeted behavior support for students. So this is a much smaller group of students. Tonight, we're gonna focus mostly on tier 2. One of the things that I think is important for us to acknowledge that occurs here in San Rafael and in many districts with a similar demographic population is these percentages don't actually reflect the percent of students who need especially that tier 2 intervention. So what you tend to see in districts with a population or demographic similar to ours, high numbers of English learners, is more like a house, right? You may have a large number of students who tier 1 is working for them, but you also have a large number of students, and this is what Mr. Q was talking about, where they're doing some targeted intervention K3, who need that still. And so this is the model, or this is the framework, but just know those percentages may look different here in San Rafael, and they often do across the state and across the nation. So before we move into behavioral, I just want to take a moment, Heather, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the work Susan has brought to this within Ed Services. She came to us in July and dove straight in and has just been a really wonderful asset to have as a former principal, as someone who spent some time learning special education. She brings just a lovely, lovely calmness to student services, which there's a lot of not so calm things that sometimes happen in student services, but she's also really thoughtful. And so she's built amazing partnerships with our principals, even principals she didn't work with, some of our elementary principals, and has just been so focused in the systems and structures and then working deeply with Ed Services. So we're just very, very appreciative of the work that she continues to do and what she brings to our team. Thank you.
Two specific things she's really done an amazing job in the secondary realm. One is working with our deans and helping to bring structure and clarity to that role from 6th grade all the way through 12th grade. You've done an amazing job with that. And then also there are a number of very unique cases where a student needs different placement or has some specific needs. And oftentimes those conversations between parents are sticky and challenging, and the grace and wisdom that you approach each and every one of those conversations is something we can all learn from. So I think you're doing an amazing job with all this work, and we're happy to have you as part of the team.
Thank you.
And now you get the clicker.
Okay.
Brilliant and brief, right?
Yeah, I'll channel that inner calm that I have, right? So what I'd like to do is really focus in on the systems that we're developing to support students social emotionally and behaviorally. And it looks slightly different depending on what it is. Oops, I forgot I'm in charge of this. So what I'll be doing is I'll be talking about the work of the school counselor, also the wellness centers, and then we'll move into the work of the deans at Midland High School in terms of working on restorative practices. So in elementary schools, we've been focusing on, now that we have counselors at every site, and now we also have 3 counselors, a grade level counselor at Davidson Middle School. We're really focusing in on that work to make sure it's targeted and it's really giving us the most bang for the buck, and we're really getting the services out to the students. So when Stephanie talks about tier 1, we're talking about things that the counselors are doing that reach out to all students in the classroom. And at tier 2, those are for the students who really need more targeted supports. So how do we determine who gets those services? So what I'd like to do first, though, is really sort of highlight the work that we're doing with the social emotional curriculum, because depending on what site you're in right now, you may, as a student, you may or may not be getting a curriculum that really helps teach you how to regulate yourself and how to be a better friend and how to work within a group and work interpersonally with others and how to problem solve, really. So what we've done is we created a pilot team. And this work actually started a couple of years ago. We sort of picked it up at the start of this year. And you can click on that little green underline there. This is actually a preview of a presentation we'll be giving to the principals and the counselors. But at this point, our pilot team and our ECAC, or our elementary curriculum committee, has given us the green light to move forward with second step, which is the SEL curriculum that we'll be bringing to all of our K-8 classrooms next year. So what we're working on now is really explaining this to the staff and developing an implementation plan. What does that look like now, and what will that look like next year? So if you just go down a few slides to that one, actually that one. It shows you the elements of social emotional learning. And what we were looking for was a program where teachers would have short lessons, easy to implement in Spanish and English, and they were trauma informed. They're speaking to what the students need. So if you go down to slide 6, you'll see that this has been sort of a work in progress over several years. And I think it's 1 or 2 more slides. This one. So what we found was this particular curriculum met all of this criteria that we were looking for. And so this is where we're at right now. We are looking to implement this for next school year, and we're working with the staff to develop a plan. So if you go back to the original. So in tier 2, what I want to show you is the cost or coordination of care team and the work that we're doing at all the school sites to support that work. So go to the next slide.
Why don't you try that?
Oh, sorry.
Do you want me to do that for you?
No, I've got it. So these are the people that we have coordinating at each school site, who are aware of all the supports that are given at that site. So our school counselors, our site administrators, our wellness coordinators, our school psychologists, they're coming together to look and to see what the students need and to develop a plan for them. And what we had before was something similar to this, but not every school was implementing it. And it's really a critical part of MTSS. I'm sorry, I'm like losing my voice here. And what they noticed is that students generally have more than one thing that they're working on. They may have a social emotional need, a behavioral need, and or an academic need. So they're looking to provide some service for them where they can really support them. So our counselors at K-8, to give you a sense of the work that they're doing, They have so far this year done over 300 guided SEL lessons in the classroom and over 300 individual counseling sessions, and as well as group counseling sessions. And at middle and high schools have our wellness centers, which have wellness coordinators, our wellness outreach specialists, our marriage and family therapists that are a part of that work, as well as the community-based organizations that come to the site to provide individual therapy. And so the wellness centers are conducting at tier 1 for all students, parent ed nights, advisory lessons, and at tier 2, they are running the coordination of services team and providing individual and group therapy. And this just shows you what we have in-house and what we have MOUs and community-based organizations providing that support. And the wellness centers look slightly different at middle school than they do at high school. So drop-ins in middle school would be mostly at lunch, whereas in high school, students can request a brain break, which is about 10 to 15 minutes, where they ask their teacher for a pass, and they may go to the wellness center and sit and sort of decompress, use some of their stress management techniques, and go back to class. So there's been over 1,000 drop-ins. And at high school, students can also self-refer. So we've had over 80 self-referrals. And in the middle school, we've had 51 students receiving individual therapy. And then when we talk about the coordination of services teams, we see that in both middle and high school, the wellness center coordinators are the ones running those meetings because they're the ones who are aware of all the supports that can be provided. And so there have been 78 so far at Davidson and over 100 at combining both of the high schools. And then restorative practices is more on the behavioral side. So we're talking about work that we're doing to divert suspension. So students who may have in the past been suspended for a particular behavior would now be offered the option to go to a peer court or to have a restorative circle or conversation or to work one-to-one with a mentor. So the work of the dean has been really focused on that suspension diversion and working with the peer courts. At tier 1, both of the high schools now have what we call a peer solution classes, where students are taught those techniques, and also they're the ones who are running the peer courts and the peer mentoring. And you can see at this point in the year, we have over 100 students trained, either through the high school classes, and in Davidson Middle School, we have about 40 students trained there. And then we've held over 16 restorative circles, and 28 students have been referred to Youth Transforming Justice, which may be the Marin Youth Court or working with that group. And 32 students have actually been a part of the Peer Solutions one-to-one mentoring. And then we've had 15 students who've been referred for drug and alcohol training through TUBE. So I know that's a lot, but I wanted to give you sort of a high level idea of what we're doing system-wide in those 3 areas and give you some of the numbers, some data. Have any questions?
I do, but do you want us to the end? Sorry.
Let's go through the.
Should we finish and then we'll come back? Okay, yeah, all right, let's, because I think you guys said the last part is short, yes. Okay.
One slide each.
Yeah, we'll hold it.
Okay, so again, we're gonna be very brief here. In terms of tier 1 academic supports, in elementary. We've talked a lot about these. I want to just highlight, this is work that's also happening in our secondary, but getting really clear on what's the most important thing to teach. So our essential standards and aligning that. So we've done that for language arts. We've done at the end of last year. It's in our scope and sequence, and we're trying to figure out the right time to do that for math, but we will be doing that as well. So that's been a big focus we've had around tier 1, in addition to all of the other work we're doing. And then I do want to highlight 2 things for tier 2. ELOP, our after school programs, that is an opportunity for tier 2 support. Not all of our students who are in after school need tier 2 support, but we prioritize students who need tier 2 support, right? Giving them more time in the day with some adults. And then the other thing is intervention. This has been a really, really pivotal, I think, shift for us in elementary to have at least one intervention teacher at all of our school sites. It is still hard to support all the students who need intervention, but this is a big step for us in doing that work. And we've really worked to systematize this. So we use our cost system, we have aligned curriculum, we have 68-week cycles, and we're going in and we're saying, is this working? We're teaching students whatever skill they need in a different way. Is this working? If it is, great, let's keep doing it. If it's not after a 6 to 8 week cycle, then we need to see what else we need to do. But that cost team is really integral in doing that. So those intervention supports are a really big shift for our elementary schools, and we're really excited to have those this year.
And in secondary, like Stephanie was saying, some similar things. The coordination of services team is really available to all students, but kind of takes students from tier 1 to tier 2. Susan's done a really nice job getting that up and running. There were some structures already in place, but kind of readjusting them and aligning them is some of the work that she's done. We're really focused on priority standards this year, and that's a really fundamental, here are the things that we're going to teach our students. Just a quick note about that is that when you look at, let's say, the Algebra 1 standards, there might be 30 different standards, and to teach all of those effectively over the course of a semester is really difficult. So prioritizing maybe the top 10 or 15 and making sure all kids get those is really what that's part of. We're also trying to expand access to AP students for students of AP classes for students of color. Our principal, Michael Stachin, has done an amazing job at re-envisioning the advanced math course at Davidson, and we have doubled the number of sections and increased the number of students of color in that program as well. Our CTE programming is expanding. We're going to come to you a little bit later this spring with more CTE stuff, but we've expanded, I believe, from 2 to I think 12 CTE credentialed teachers. So 3 years ago, we only had 2 teachers that were eligible to teach a CTE course, and now we have over a dozen. So really excited about that. At secondary, we really need to take a look at some curriculum adoptions. Some of the texts that we're using are a little bit outdated, and we need to bring those up to par. And then some targeted counseling support. And then for tier 2, we put in an MTSS coordinator this year at both of our high schools, and we're kind of taking a look at that this year and seeing if that is actually leading to the type of tutoring that we're wanting. And our high school principals are kind of re-envisioning that a little bit this year, whether we continue with that or do a seventh period for particular students. We really want a tier 2, some sort of extra tier 2 to support for our secondary kids. And that's something the elementary team has done a really nice job of that we haven't really dialed in secondary. And I'm really proud of our work that we've been doing with our counselors and hatching results this year, actually using data to drive some counseling decisions, and that should help lead students to the right courses. So those are some of the tier 2 things that we're doing. And I will come to you with a bridge presentation in, I think, 2 board meetings to talk to you a little bit about how we're going to re-envision bridge next year. So that is tier 1, tier 2, and secondary. Questions for any of us?
Okay, I'm gonna go to Trustee Jackson.
I just have a question about how we embed this in our system. Restorative justice actually started in Davidson Middle School. But once that teacher left, the program floundered. And it's floundered in just about every school that we've tried to put it in, unless there's someone who's passionate about it and willing to stick with it. So, and it's such an important program. Where it does get used and like you say, it makes a difference. So my question is, especially as we look at funding cuts in the coming years, what can we do to keep that program alive in our schools?
Well, just first thing that comes to mind when you talk about Davidson is that right now for restorative justice work, it's not just the work of the dean, but the 3 counselors are also a part of that, and they're training the students, they're following up. And our wellness coordinator is also a part of that. So he's run some of those restorative conversations. So I think having more people involved in the process and buying into that process, and the more the students are interested, and I think some of you have been familiar with some of this in middle school, is that they want to see it again in high school and they want to be a part of this. And I think that it's just going to be a part of our system.
Okay, I just want to thank all 3 of you, because this is the way that the LCAP and the money that we get from the state, this is what it was meant to do, is make these kind of very intentional improvements in our schools. So thank you. And it's just rewarding to see what you've moved forward that has been conceptual for years. Thank you.
I think Vice President Martel Dow had a question, and then I'll open it up to other trustees if anyone else has something else to add.
Sure, I have some questions, thank you. You were gonna go in
Didn't mean
order,
to push-
President,
did it-
that's okay, it's
well,
okay, I'm ready.
I went on who
I was-
raised their hand first,
I was
sorry.
born ready, thank you. So I do actually, now that we're connecting with what President Trustee Jackson's mentioned about restorative justice, I think it is fantastic that we're seeing some of these outcomes, so congratulations, because we have been asking about this for a while. But some of the things is that I feel, and it's my sense that what intention is that the restorative justice is not something seen that a specific staff are the ones in charge of overseeing necessarily. Of course, there are some guiding principles and they can be accountable for certain outcomes, but I think it's a shift in the mentality on how we go about discipline. So I would like to see that being part of more than we have this counselor here, we have that person there, and more, you know, it's embedded into the whole school system, right? And also, when we talk, so I would like to get your thoughts on that, because I think that that's something we need to shift a little bit. Like it's all of us that have to be invested into changing the discipline and the way we look at discipline processes. So that's one thing. So I don't know if you want to respond one more, but I can keep going, or
Let me jump on that one really quick. Something Susan said at the beginning of her first answer was about training.
Yeah.
And making sure that more than one person is trained. And I think that's really integral to the embedding, is that it's not a counselor, it's not a peer court class.
Yeah.
Because the counselor might go away, or the peer court class might go away. But if the habits of mind of our principals and assistant principals are that we want to reduce suspension and find ways to repair harm when harm's done, then I think restorative practices will live beyond the funding sources. And I think Susan's already doing an amazing job of expanding the training and building in the mindset for our folks.
And we're looking at the data with the deans each month.
Nice.
And really asking those questions. So like, for example, when we ask for this data, it causes all to reflect, like, why are things slightly different at one site than another? And just brought up some questions.
Exactly.
And the alignment piece is one of those things that helps shift the mindset. If Tara Linda is suspending for that and we're not,
exactly.
Let's have a conversation about why we shouldn't suspend for either, or the same infraction in either school, so.
Yeah. That's exactly my follow-up question, is like, how do you make decisions around, okay, we have a roadmap, suspension goes this way, suspension plus, because I also don't think that if you need to suspend a student because of, you know, maybe the evaluation was very egregious and requiring you to do that, that doesn't mean that you cannot also add on some restorative justice practices to the suspension, right? So I also want to know that, like, who decides, who is the enforcer that tells this way, that way?
That is a great question, because that's also part of the work that we're doing this year, is to really look at what we call our behavior matrix, our discipline matrix.
Nice.
So for each ed code, what is our response, not only in a disciplinary sense, but restorative justice wise? So what are our options?
Nice.
And typically, it's our principal that is like the end all be all with that, but they usually delegate that to a dean or assistant
Mhm.
principal. Unless it's a really complex issue that might not follow the matrix exactly, then the principal might step in.
That sounds great. That's great.
Yeah,
Jim
two
wanted
quick
to add
things. So
something.
I think Benicia Valley is a great example of the
Mhm.
training is happening for all the staff.
Yeah.
So last year I sat in on 2 different staff
Mhm.
meetings where Don Carney and Restorative Justice and
Yeah.
his team came in.
Yeah.
So you heard Lauren talk today that twice a week in the middle
Yeah.
school, that all kids are getting a community circle on one of those days. And then the other day when it's advisory, they might get some specific problem
Mhm.
they're solving. So it's almost become a tier 1 thing. So it's training all the
Oh, very
teachers. So
Perfect.
if Susie Q leaves, so what? Because everybody else has been trained on it. So
Mhm.
that second question you're asking is a really good one, because there are some incidents where we are going to suspend a student because what they did was so egregious that like a brutal fight. We're going to suspend a student for fighting. That doesn't mean they're not going to get restorative practices with that. But there are other things like maybe drug use or something where really suspending a kid doesn't make any sense at all, right? And it's more about the education and the providing kids with those services. So it's a blend, and it's always going to be the principal who's going to work with their team to have the ultimate say.
Mhm. Great. Thank you so much for answering that. And oh, yes, please.
Do you mind?
No,
I
no,
wanted to
please,
take too much
since we're
more of
talking
your
about
time.
restorative,
No.
just, yeah, I have more
Um,
questions.
Just have a question about, you were talking about classes and educating students on social and emotional learning. And I was curious, who gets offered those classes? How do you make those decisions? And how can we expand it to just general students and not a subset of the student population?
Is that a fantastic question? So, when we talk about tier 1 at high school level, then we are saying that there are certain things that students are getting in 9th grade in health class, right? And so when we talk about social emotional, that's an opportunity we have when we know every student in 9th grade across the district is taking that class. So I think what we need to do is look for more opportunities for 10th graders, 11th graders, 12th graders to get that as well. So it's not just something that's happening in advisory or when someone comes in to visit your class.
And one thing Susan's identified to that point is that if all 9th graders take this health class and it talks about drug use or healthy relationships, that might not necessarily be relevant for a 9th grader at that time. And then 2 or 3 years later, do they remember that health class on healthy relationships when they have their first partner, right? So I think what Susan's kind of posed to me is that to actually have a couple targeted classes throughout the high school experience. So you get that foundational thing, that foundational class in your freshman year, but then you kind of get a reintroduction or revision to that as you get into 10th, 11th, and 12th grade.
And are you discussing that as part of, you were mentioning priority standards and alignment with the 2 schools. Is that part of the discussion of priority standards and what we teach in here?
It's not, but it would be a similar conversation to say, the 10th grade experience, you get this in English class. And that's kind of connected back to the 9th grade. And Tam already has a model. Why am I?
Yeah, they
go
do.
ahead.
They have a model and I think a lot of wellness has been really built out through SFUSD and TAM Unified School District. So we have some models out there to look at. And things have come up this year.
Yeah.
We're like, we need to get the information out to students. And where do we do that? We can't reach the 11th graders with the 9th grade health class, for example. So where we have this new curriculum coming in at K-8, I think now moving forward, the work will be to look at the high school level.
Could I ask one more question? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
This is more about, you mentioned expanding.
Sorry, no,
Please go
We're
Tess,
joking.
go Tess.
You mentioned expanding access to the AP classes, and I was wondering if you could go a little bit into what support will be put in place for students taking those classes who maybe haven't taken those like advanced classes in the past and will need support in work management and all of that sort of stuff.
That's where that MTSS support comes in and having additional tutoring. We're also, there's a very early conversation around doing potentially a pre-AP class It would just be like a CP class, so the college prep class that every student takes. There's no additional grade bump or anything. But you could potentially take a pre-AP, have all 10th graders take a pre-AP English class, for instance, right? And the rigor level is a little bit higher. It kind of has similar functions as an AP, but it's not quite there yet. But it's a stepping stone. So then you give all your 10th graders access to kind of this pre-AP experience. So then they can either choose or not choose in 11th or 12th grade. And it follows the Common Core state standards. So we can still use our priority standards within that, but it's just set up in a different way. So one of the things when we're looking at curriculum adoptions, we might take a look at 10th grade English to say, is a pre-AP class something that would be worthwhile? Or could we offer half the sections, or do we do all sections? So that's something that we're just starting conversations around.
Well, thank you, I appreciate it, and I appreciate your presentation, and I apologize for grilling you a little bit.
That's okay. I'm gonna move to trustee Martine, if you had any, no? Okay, answered. Trustee Palma, did you have any, I know you wanted to ask a question.
I want to ask a question. Okay, I have two questions actually, and I'll be quick. The first one is regarding restorative justice. I hear that when you talk about it, is almost related just to students being suspended and just related to students. Well, I'd like to share with you that I was in a restorative justice circle where a staff was involved and a staff was at fault. So I would like, he wasn't found accountable for it. So I would like this restorative action to apply to all, not just the students.
Yeah,
Anyway.
actually, you bring up a great point, because there are some times when the conflict is not peer-to-peer, but it's with a peer and a school employee.
Or community.
For example, maybe a teacher or a counselor or someone. And so what we do in those incidents is we bring them together and we mediate a conversation. But of course, you always have to have the buy-in from both sides, right? And you have to fully explain the process before you get in the room together, right? And
Correct.
so without that, it's not as successful. And the smaller the group, the better. So you
Yes,
really get
and I won't go
deeper
into
the problem.
details about this because I was saying I will not, definitely not. But I really would like for this to be applied to everyone, including staff. And when we talk about restorative action, it shouldn't be just addressed about students only, because believe me, that is not necessarily what's happening in our district. Okay, my other question is regarding the MTSS for special education meaning IEP, right? Okay, I know that when you do the IEP, for those IEP recipients, they have renewals once a year, right? What happens if let's say the child is not really receiving the assistance or performing, or it's not improving even, or maybe not getting the assistance they're supposed to be receiving? Who follows up on that? I mean, assuming that the parent doesn't know how to even follow up, but they just know that the child keeps on failing.
So there's a
What are
special
the steps?
education, yeah, special education, and this would really be depending on the grade level, Leanna, Jason. But there are very, very clear rules and procedures and laws around special education. And so one of them is actually that a parent can call and ask for an IEP at any time. So you don't have to wait a year. And we have special education teams that do communicate.
You mean within the IEP, you can
So
call
I
them
could
on
say,
IEP?
I'm concerned, my student, my child is really having a hard
can
time
approve
and
it, though.
I'm not seeing the growth I wanna see. So I can call, I can send an email, I can write a note, but I can say, hey, can the team come together again to meet? So while it's required once a year, you can always meet more than that if either the school site or the parent feels like they need to. And then the other big piece is the rights of families who have students with special education needs are very well documented and extremely complicated, right? The notices you get are like 10 pages in legal language. And so that's
Different.
also really important. And that's what we have really, really amazing IEP teams at school sites. And it's always okay as a parent to stop and say, I don't understand what's happening. And I feel like my student is struggling in this, because those meetings are an opportunity to come together and talk about what progress is my child making, and where do I still have concerns, and can we set goals around that? So I would say specific questions, definitely wanting to check in with Leanna and Jason and with the school-based IEP team, because the needs of all of our students, but especially our kids with special education needs, can be really complex and can shift a lot within a year, right? Sometimes a student all of a sudden is just rocking it and doesn't really need that same level of support. And other times maybe something new is coming up and we want to support them more. So parents have a lot of rights, and I would definitely contact those IEP teams at the school site. They know the child best.
Well, thank you for the great presentation. She is amazing. Yes. Oh, so are you, please.
Yes, I
Okay,
do.
Vice President Martell.
Yes, so thank you for answering all these questions. So I just have a quick, thank you for putting the list of therapists and the folks that are assisting our schools. So I was a little bit, I wanna dig a little bit into some of the data that you provided around the referrals, both for elementary and high school. And around, so you talk about referrals, but that doesn't necessarily mean sessions when you talk about external. For one data point that caught my eye was around the CBO therapist, which is the community-based organization therapist, I presume, right? So these are folks that are outside the district that you are referring students to. So where documented is the amount of referrals, not necessarily the amount of sessions that this. So what you're telling me here is perhaps not the full service that they're getting, because when you say a referral, that could mean 10 sessions, right? That could mean 5 sessions.
Right.
And do we have an understanding of what CBOs, do we have a list of what CBOs are actually providing behavioral health? Because, my time, when I was helping folks locally, I know that there was a big constraint around behavioral health within our own ecosystem of nonprofits. So I was wondering, who are we partnering with that we're referring our students to that actually had capacity to see our students? And do we have MOUs in place? Is it doing through the county? What is the system of referral to CBOs?
Yeah, so in most cases, our CBOs are coming to the school site to deliver the therapy session directly to students. So we have MOUs with BACR, Side by Side, the SPAR Center. I had listed them all on the slide, but they're all scheduled in to the wellness centers to come in and meet with students. And they're also meeting with students K-8, depending on which CBO it is. But just know that there's capacity there's more demand than there are therapists out there right now. We need a lot of bilingual support, which everyone's looking for that. Right?
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Just like we've been on a wait list with BACR for one of our elementary schools since before summer, but we actually just on Friday, they said they have a therapist for us 2 days a week. So we're adding that to Via Vista. So we stay on wait lists and then they contact us. Those
Thank you. That is very helpful.
I just have a question about when our CBOs, we do have LOIs or agreements with them. Are there themes or data points that they're lifting of like saying, here are the themes of what we're seeing that, not to identify this one student said this, but are there themes or trends of what's happening in those conversations? And that, that can really inform us as teachers and schools. And so that's what I'm just curious about, because if there seems like it's 7 partners, it would be great to just, what are the data points? What are we hearing? What are the themes?
I think
what gender is it? Gender, is it age?
Yeah, I can't speak exactly to what the themes are, but I do know those conversations are happening at the site because the oversight of the community of the wellness coordinator is very closely knit with any of the therapists that are coming in. So they're having weekly meetings with each other, really talking about the cases and whatever's coming up. So
nice.
I would say one thing that definitely percolates to the top for me is generalized anxiety caused by stress. And that's where there's a really delicate balance between promoting things like advanced placement and also making sure that the student is ready for it and they're taking the appropriate ones and not taking 15 of them. So I think that that is something that we definitely see in our wellness centers at the high school level. And then there's obviously, there might be a traumatic event in a student's life where there's a divorce or they're experiencing homelessness for the first time.
Right.
Those not little things, those things in a student's life will bring them to the wellness centers as well.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I have one brief point, and I don't think it's necessarily something you can answer tonight, but something I would love to follow up on, and that's obviously a lot of the work that we've done, a lot of the work you're talking about, some of it was using COVID dollars, some of it's grant money. We've sort of pulled together all these resources to be able to provide this suite of services. We work with community-based organizations. I would love to know more about how we're coordinating with Marin County and Health and Human Services for them to take some of this load. Because as we know, the COVID dollars are running out and I don't want to leave our students in the lurch. So because of the socioeconomic status of many of our families, many of them are on Medicaid, I would love to see us explore how to help our families continue to access those services. So again, not something we have talked about tonight, something I'd love to see us explore. I know our vice president agrees with me. I also want to see if there's any public comment either in the room or online. Yes, come on up. And if you're online, just as a reminder, use the raise hand function and we will recognize you. But please come on back up.
All right, so Ann Levinson again. Apparently I like speaking at these meetings. They see more of me. I guess I just want to speak, and this is again, not something necessarily to be discussed, but in listening to the presentations, thank you very much. I am loving hearing restorative justice. I love that that is something that our school district is embracing. I would love to see opportunities to expand into family conversations and family education, because I think that that will only help strengthen students' ability to embrace, understand, and use, and have it be something that's a little bit more universally understood and the common language and expectation. So I'd love to figure out how do we expand and extend what the good work that's happening at school into parents' awareness and parents' activation.
Thank you for your comment. Christina, do we have any public comments online? Okay, thank you. Oh, Robin, please come on up. Sorry, Robin, didn't mean to skip over you.
My name is Robin Doley. I'm the Director of Collaborative Action at Marin Promise Partnership. I just wanted to add one point. There was one theme that I heard that kind of popped up a number of times in a number of different ways. But as you think about the Community Schools Grant, I think one of the intended purposes from the state of California and one of the best practices that's elevated around the country is the idea of having a coordinator on site who is part of COST or your MTSS team, who is also at your PTO, who is also at your student site council, who's also meeting with your key partners that are engaged in after school programming, wellness, all of the different, the broad spectrum of all of these institutional bodies and partnerships, to be able to not only lift up those data points as Trustee Martine pointed to, but also to bring rigor to the process of saying, what data points should each of these bodies be tracking?
Yes. Yeah.
How do we make those transparent and common across all of these different bodies? And then how do we engage in continuous improvement as a full community? I think this team is doing exceptional, and as a parent in the district, I leave inspired every other week when I come to these meetings by the work of this team. I'm also an educator, so that's what inspires me. But there's something to be said for there is the community that is beyond the scope of their work. Right? And having community voice as part of that, as Trustee Palma continues to bring back to the conversation, that's what the Community Schools Grant is intended to do, is to fund that process and have it become an indefinite part of how the schools operate, broader school community operates. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Okay, thank you for your presentation and for all your hard work. The next item on the agenda is an update on Together 2024, goal number 4, systems and structures. promoting integration and ensuring equitable resources and opportunities for all students. Superintendent Hogaboom, take it away.
All right, can you go to the next one? Okay, so we are just overall, just so you know, the first, up till now, we've been hitting all these goals, goal 1, goal 2, goal 3, goal 4. We're almost done. So I'm gonna talk briefly about 4.3. 4.4 is kind of on hold because Sarah's been out, to be honest. And then 4.5, Bob's gonna touch on tonight, and then Dan's gonna hit that pretty heavy with the bond next time.
Nice.
So we're almost done with loop around once, and then we'll go for one more loop around next time, and then we'll be at the end of the year. So, I mean, this is our Together 2024 plan, so obviously this is the gist of what we should be talking about, so that's what we're doing. All right, so to jump to this one, so, okay, so there's 2 parts of this. The first part is about that we will identify high leverage and feasible actions to increase the diversity of our elementary schools to be more closely aligned with our district demographics. This goal came out of the equity audit, and specifically the equity blueprint plan, which followed the equity audit, which talks about how to integrate schools, which is a big, huge, daunting task for us to look at. And then the second goal was to analyze our current spending at each school to ensure that each student in the district is funding at equitable levels per pupil, and explore the Student Equitable Needs Index, the SENI, as a way to measure this. So I'm going to talk about the second one first. So we are, we want to make sure that all of our students, that goal is actually asking for all the kids to have equal funding, right? Because you know that if you looked at the PTO dollars that are raised, and then you compare that with Title I and this and that, we want to make sure that they're about the same. And in the past, I think a lot of us would say, well, the Title I dollars that are high need schools are kind of offset by the large amounts of money that certain PTOs like Sun Valley and Glenwood bring in, and those get kind of offset. But actually, that's not even good enough, because we know that our highest need kids need the most resources, right? So we are working on that with Bob. So Bob has also been working with our staff about what is the proper staffing that we need to have at each of our schools. So if I'm at Benicia Valley, do they get 2 counselors, and maybe Glenwood, they only need 1, or whatever, maybe their staff kinds of support. So there's different ways of looking at how we're gonna staff each of our school sites and how much that's gonna be. But we also do wanna keep a kind of a master list of all the funding, all the grants that come into each of our schools. When you add in the PTO, when you add in, you know, any grant that they got, or whether it's the when we're just talking about the community schools grants, or whether it's Title I money or whatever it is, how does that all look? So we will be bringing that to you sometime later on this spring, the second time around. So we've kind of started doing that, but we kind of need to make sure that it's more thoughtful, and that's criteria for that. So for example, at what point does a school get a second assistant principal? Is it just a matter of how many kids you have? So if you get 600 kids, you get an assistant principal. You know, at what point do you get a dean? Should Benicia Valley get a dean of students? So right now, that's a little bit arbitrary, a little bit. So we're really going to be working with cabinet, with our principals, to see if we can come up with kind of a model that will make sure that we're making sure that, you know, we're giving equitable funding to all of our kids. So that's the second one. Bye, Ted. The first one is kind of in progress. So Gina and Linda and I were kind of meeting as a subcommittee on that one. Because I'm leaving, it's put a little bit of a crimp in that one, I think. That is a big, huge, daunting task that needs kind of a task force, which we have been kind of talking about. One of the things we are looking at, and that's why it's first up there, is our TK school locations. There's some things we can do in terms of where we have the TKs and how many we have and at what schools they're at. That might help to lead to a little bit more integration in some of our schools. So for example, if we, 2 of our biggest schools are San Pedro and Bahia Vista. So if we had maybe 3 kindergartens instead of 4, we were able to expand that kindergarten to Glenwood, for example, then we might, just by doing that in itself, would help to integrate some of our schools. So there are some things like that, but some of the bigger things of reviewing the school boundaries, looking at the interdistrict transfer policy, After-school childcare is another one that we can look at, because if we can't provide childcare like in Laurel Dale, Pepper was always saying, well, we don't have after-school childcare at Laurel Dale. So a lot of parents who might want to go there aren't going to go there because they need the childcare and they can't get it. So I guess what I would say is the things we can look at kind of from a staff standpoint, we are, but we're kind of holding off on putting together a big task force just because of my being in transition. So it's kind of a brief report. So any questions, comments, directions that you guys have about that would be.
Yeah, any staff, or sorry, staff, any board comments or questions, and then we'll wait for public comment till the end of this presentation. And then just as a note, we're gonna take a brief break after this before our next two presentations and the consent agenda. But are there any board questions, comments at this point?
Okay, that was a great report. I'm just, did you mention the study that
We're not doing the study. No, we decided not to do the study because of the transition and wanting to make sure that the new leadership agreed with the focus of the study. So
maybe next year?
Maybe next year, yes. It's all drafted. It's all ready to go.
Okay,
So
okay, thank
maybe we decided to move forward with it.
Yep.
That makes sense. Continue.
No, I'm
Oh, that's it. That's the whole thing. Okay.
Questions, anyone?
Any questions? Okay, do we have any public comments either in the room or online? As a reminder, use the raise hand function. Seeing none, so it's 7:55, let's take a brief break until 8 o'clock and then we'll reconvene for the rest of the meeting.
8:05 because I need to use the restroom.
Okay, sorry, 8:05.
Please, thank you.
Request.
Thank you, please. This is gonna be quick.
Okay, yeah, they'll be fast. And then we have closed session
5 minutes
afterwards.
behind. 5, that's like a regular. Good job.
The next item on the agenda is an update on Together 2024 Goal 4, Systems and Structures, Improve School and District Facilities. Bob Marcucci, please take it away.
Yeah, can we pull that up?
It's coming, it's coming.
So I'm gonna really try to be brief. This is goal 4.5 of the Together 2024, and this is a goal in terms of improving school and district facilities where there are pieces of it and systems to put in place that are with our maintenance and operations team and with our site and district leaders. And then there's also a huge part of improving district facilities, which our Senior Director of Capital Improvements, Dan Zeich, oversees. So it's sort of a collaborative effort, and he definitely helped work on this presentation and provided some input. So, and again, as Jim said earlier, Dr. Zeich will be able to, he'll be providing you with a major update on the bond program at the next board meeting as well. So we have that to look forward to. So tonight's goal is way down there. I guess we're the last one of this first round.
Wow.
They're
so important.
Last but not least.
So improve school and district facilities. What I did is I just took the goal, the SMART goal, which is really to identify priority projects to improve or maintain facilities, develop a multi-year plan, and maximize the revenues in the interest of creating positive learning and work environments. And then there's some strategic actions under there, which is what we said we would do to address these. And then I just tried to do an update. So the strategic actions that we're taking is we're planning to do these site walks with myself, the maintenance and operations director, and Dan Zeich this spring to kind of update a project list. Now there are bond projects and there's a whole identification process and site facilities committees that work on identifying what those projects are. These site walks are often to help inform our maintenance and operations department about some of those smaller scale projects that we want to implement and prioritize. But there's always a confluence, I think, of those, the bond program, and it's like, what can you do? What can I do? What can we do together? So establishing a site facilities committee, like I talked about, that's part of the bond program, as well as the site facilities master plan, which you've had several updates about, and that continues to be updated and shift with the priorities. There's weekly collaborative meetings between maintenance and operations and capital facilities teams. So really Dan, Dave Pedroli and Tracy Brody are meeting weekly and just talking about that transition from capital improvement to the maintenance and operation of that facility. We've implemented iPads for work order assignments and communication, and we're continuing to develop goals with the maintenance and operations team, mainly the maintenance team when we're talking about work orders, about what is a good completion rate and how can we improve the communication through our system, which is called School Dude. Not a great name for a program. We didn't make it up, but really trying to make sure that our sites and site administrators know what's happening when they put work orders in. So those are the areas that we're working on in regards to that systemizing ongoing improvements. The next piece is around seeking revenue sources and maximizing their use. And so you can see what we said we were going to do. And then what we've done is we've committed some reserve funds with your support and approval to support the HVAC project at Davidson and a restroom project at Benicia Valley. We've utilized ESSER funds. Really the bulk of ESSER 2 went to support ventilation at our elementary schools. We've applied for some state grant funding to support TK and HVAC. And we are collaboratively identifying projects to use our routine restricted maintenance account and our facilities use revenues to improve various facilities around the district. Next piece is around improving safety and security. And so the main areas that we have implemented there, we've installed lock blocks on all the exterior facing doors. We've added security fencing at elementary school sites where it was needed. We have a 3-digit emergency number to call phones in school offices. So wherever you are on a campus, there's a 3-digit code. You dial it and it rings every phone in the office. You make sure that you can get somebody. We've installed the mirrored window film at all of our elementary school sites. That is anything that's lower than 6 feet, any window lower than 6 feet. We've increased security cameras and particulate sensors at all our middle school and high school bathrooms. We've instituted the use of ID badges, and we're continuing to
Oh, yeah, terrible from the board. I have it too.
Mine too.
Okay, good, all right, you guys are good. We're really trying to continue to send that message. I really think it's important that we all can identify who's a staff member and who maybe isn't. We've supported site safety trainings and drills with our emergency preparedness consultant. And we've really upped that level of trainings this year, making sure that all of our sites are doing those. We, part of the new bond program coming up, there's going to be a lot of security technology and access controls as part of these upgrades. We also recently implemented a QR code system. So if you're in a classroom and there's a custodial issue, so it's not a work order thing, but if you're noticing that, hey, my room hasn't gotten vacuumed, and I want to understand that, you can go to the QR code, you can fill out a form, and that gets immediately directed to a team in our maintenance, our custodial supervisor, and then they are coordinating with the site to get that custodian to that room to make sure that cleaning happens. So that seems to be working relatively well so far.
That's great.
Here's a couple of pictures of some of the security fencing. That one on the left is an area behind Sun Valley that was sort of open to a pretty well-used trail and a hillside. We've got fencing all the way around the back of the school now. And then this one on the right is Glenwood School. That's just the left side of that main office building. The right side also has security fencing that we were able to control during the hours of school, still leaving that open for community members after school, so that the campus can be used like a park. Those are the picture of the mirrored window film, so you can kind of see. I thought I'd maybe take the picture of me standing in front of the window and then you can see my reflection, but you can see that you can't see into the classroom during the daytime. And then just another example on the right of some more security fencing that wasn't there previous to this work at Sun Valley. So those are just a couple examples. And then the last one, I believe, is around prioritizing and implementing bond projects. And that is definitely Dr. Dan Zeich's area of expertise. And so I just added a couple of things that have happened so far. The district pool standards process is complete. Reminder that the pools at the 2 high schools are in phase 1 of the upcoming bond program, so that's exciting. The solar request for proposal will be released tomorrow. So that's exciting to get that work started. The Davidson Student Center is in phase 1 of the elementary bond program. So those, between the pools and the student center, that's going to be a really impactful optic right at the beginning of this program. The universal transitional kindergarten expansion planning in collaboration with the bond program, kind of the impact of that on our bond program is in progress, and we're having collaborative conversations around that. And then the other piece would be that the education specifications process is in progress, and I'd give you an opportunity, Dan, if you want to add to any of this or whether that covers it.
You covered it well, Bob. I would say just in terms of projects, we've
managed to, with, state funding, we managed to get HVAC in at
Nice.
Vista, Davidson, with collaboration with the business office. In other grant areas, we've gotten to phase 3 of Davidson roofing and grants. So these are projects that are making a big difference in impact for students and staff.
Absolutely. And I believe that's it.
All right, any questions? And again, we are gonna have an in-depth presentation, I think, next meeting, is that right? Okay, on the bond, which encompasses a lot of these issues. Seeing none, sorry, Lucy, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I
sorry.
just didn't want to be the first one, so I was like, waiting.
Sorry.
Can I be the first one?
Yes, no,
First one,
please,
go ahead.
please. Trust you, Judge.
No, I'm just thrilled to see all of this and I may just be too old school on this, but it just breaks my heart to see us become too fortified. And I want to give kudos for the appearance of the fence. I think the fence is well done. It's not it's not barbed wire or on it. It's not chicken wire or anything. So it's black and it looks good on our campuses. So I appreciate that. I have had some parents ask about access. They feel like it's, they're losing their community access. So I'm glad to hear you say that, our intent is to maintain some community access, but, particularly in some of our neighborhoods where recreation space is so desperately needed. So that's just one thing that I'm sure you'll talk about, because we have a whole policy about that. The other one is with the school, pools. Whether we could get community access to the pools. And I know that maybe partnership with the city might not work. I'll just throw that out there, but I'm looking at Robin because you're doing the community schools thing, but maybe there's another partner who'd be willing to run those pools and we work out the liability and all that, but they could be open in the summer so that we can have the school be available to, for the kids who don't have pools in their lives.
I like that.
So anyway, so that's another example of what can happen with community schools.
Yeah, just this past summer, we were able to we had a YMCA program and we were able to allow them to use the Terra Linda pool. And it was really fun to see, I don't know, 150, 200 kids a couple times a week running around the pool. So we need to find more ways to do things like that.
Thank you. Very good.
Vice President Martin.
All right, so.
And then I'll.
Okay, you're good. All right. Thank you, President Bailey. So I do have a follow-up about the fences and a little bit about, something we don't like to talk about too much, but it's there and it's a parent's mind, which has to do with school security. And you brought up a lot of things that are around cameras and fencing. But one thing that maybe we need to think about, and I would love to get maybe your thoughts, Jim, and I know that you're transitioning, from your role, but I was wondering if we need to have a visit from the chief of police and the sheriff's office to come and to speak to the board so that the community understands what are the plans from a law enforcement perspective around what to do when a tragic, like an active shooter comes to our schools. I don't think we have opened this as a public item. And obviously there are security protocols that they may not be able to share, but I think it is something around the transparency for staff, for students and for parents that are having people that understand what the plans are and understand what the community plans. I mean, we are schools. If there's not a countywide and a citywide plan of what to do with our schools, then that is a big problem. So I think Superintendent checked in with the chief of police at some point, but I'm not sure how detailed that program is, if it exists, who's gonna respond, what's the coordination, and if it doesn't exist, we really need to put pressure on law enforcement. So I really invite us to think through and like how we can invite them to come to us and explain those things to the public. I would prefer not just to have a meeting on the side. No. I as then I wish, President, I hope President Daley can, think about this too, is we bring them to us or at least have an open conversation where parents and staff can weigh in around this. So that's one thought about security. So thank you for listening, because this is a tragic thing that could happen, but I think we need to keep this in mind. And the other thing is that I would love to see is they seem a little funny for some people, but I would love to bring a little bit of the woman lens when it comes to something about facilities, and it has to do with bathrooms. So I know that, and I wish students were here today because I would love to get, the thoughts about bathrooms. But one of the things that I feel like, when we talk about bathrooms, the cleanness of the bathrooms, and I'm so glad to see that there's like a ticketing system right now. I mean, I love that idea, but I think it's fantastic and something to think about for them too, around how we build bathrooms. It's like and I can give you my experience growing up and how I wasn't able to find women bathrooms in schools that were really clean. And I don't know why. And my daughter is going through something very similar right now. So I wonder how much, when you're saying that you're doing a walk through the schools, you are a man or you identify as men, I'm understanding men. And so do you have a woman that actually goes through the bathrooms and like sees the conditions in the restrooms? I mean, and I'm serious about this because when you're wearing a walkthrough, like we need to have a lens here, that it's a woman lens that understands the specific conditions of women's bathrooms. And then the other thing is like, the way we design restrooms, and this is a question, and this is a curiosity of mine for a while. In the United States, and this is very typical of this country, is that we have stalls that when you try to lock them, there's like a hole in between the doors. The walls don't go to the floor. And I was like, is this an American thing? Apparently it is, because it is. So, and I'm using the bathroom here that it's in the district's office, and it's like a security thing. Do we need to design the new bathrooms and our new facilities this way? Is for women that are they're going in the middle of the menstrual cycle, have to have an audience around her to see what she's going through. So I understand that there's issues that we sometimes put, at the forefront, but if anything I can do, I bring my lens through this. And if you can do the same, I will really, really appreciate it.
One suggestion is, we have had an opportunity at certain points in the capital facilities meeting when we've been able to look specifically at drawings.
Yeah.
So Carolina, trustee Martina and I are part of that committee. I will take that under advisement, and if we could perhaps take a look at bathrooms specifically and design in some subsequent meetings, then we will try to address this issue.
And might apply for men too. So I don't want to say but there's a difference sometimes depending on how you identify yourself and some biological differences for non-binary or transsexual people. But I really would love to be able to like incorporate that into our planning, if that's possible.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for listening to me.
I just totally endorse this.
I love that.
Having, been to Europe a couple times this year, fortunately, but they have a whole different sense of respect. What I'm curious about is what do they have in their high schools? What are the doors like in the high schools? And maybe we can find out.
Field trip.
What?
Field trip.
Field trip.
I'll sign up.
Field trip. Love it.
Thank you. Maybe we can ask David, who's in Norway right now,
Yeah,
to send pictures.
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go for it, Dan, yeah.
Just brief, so in the two new high school buildings, we installed the extra safety privacy stalls. So they're extra high, they're extra low, and they lock. And a lot of what drives some of that is just safety concerns between different versions.
Yeah.
So, and then I did want to comment that you make excellent points in I hear you loud and clear, and it's part of the site committee process. It's that design process at each campus that's made up of everyone, in students, in staff. So they get in and bathrooms are high priority.
Thank you. And these are issues that sometimes women or us, we don't talk about because it seems embarrassing. We're talking about the bathroom, we're talking about specific needs and just things sometimes we don't talk about it. So I just want to open it up for people to really show them how they really feel about that. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Do we have any public comments? Yeah, Molly?
I had a quick question about the reserves. It said on slide 5 and slide 7 that using the district reserves for some of these projects. Can you explain what that is, or can I offline ask you about how much are those projects and what are they?
Yeah, so we've a couple times over the last couple of years, we've committed reserves. Usually, like one of them was for a roofing project at Davidson, where we're making sure that we're taking some reserves and we're setting aside for specific projects. So that would be the main example is that, and I think a bathroom project at Venetia Valley where we committed reserves for that specific project.
No, it's like. One-time project, a one-time person.
Any other public comments? Thank you so much for your presentation. We will, and again, we're gonna learn more next board meeting. And now we'll stay with Bob and hear a little bit about our grants funds planning overview.
Yeah, thank you. Doubling up here.
Nice.
So this is meant to be a brief presentation, one of those where I would imagine you might go back to these slides and look more closely at, it's the slides where I'm looking at it and I see lots and lots of numbers, and I know that can be a challenging type of presentation, but it's really to show where we're at with some of our major grants. And then again, kind of reiterating where we're gonna go with the budgeting and the planning out multiple years with some of these grant funds. So if we look at the elementary district, you can see we have these major grants, the educator effectiveness, universal pre-K planning grant, which is essentially expended, educator effectiveness. And what this is really showing is what we've budgeted in the 22-23 year, or what's been allocated, or in some cases, like what the balance is going into 22-23, what we've committed to in this budget year, and then where is the balance at as of today. And so you can see educator effectiveness grant, we've got about another $370,000 there, and that's really driven by the ed services, professional development, things to make teachers more effective, right? The universal pre-K planning grant was a small grant that we got to really to help us get set up for the initial expansion in transitional kindergarten, and we've essentially, well, Stephanie's essentially spent all that money. Great job. Yes. Classified professional development. This is a funny little grant that I feel like we've been carrying on our books for a while, and I was just talking with Chris Posidel today, and she was like, no, I'm dipping into that thing. Anytime we send any classified folks to professional development, we're using that money. So I actually think that this balance of $17,000 is probably, we probably used about half of that after my conversation with her today. The one there with the lots of acronyms there, the arts, music, instructional materials block grant, that was something that the governor of California provided to us for this budget year, and then has now reduced it by 1/3. We haven't even gotten the money yet. So it was kind of like before we even got it, he cut it by 1/3, and he's using that money to help fund the 23-24 LCFF. So
can I make a very short comment
Sure.
about that? We got a report in the Joint Legislative Action Committee that part of his reasoning for that reduction is because of the proposition that passed, which if you read the proposition, it's not supposed to be supplanted. So whether that will actually end up happening or not, I think we have to see what the state legislature does, but we'll certainly be reminding them that that was not supposed to happen. That's not what that was supposed to be. Yes, Molly, I'm paying attention.
you're talking about Prop 28, right?
Yes, correct.
So that total that you see there, the 1.7 million, that's after having been reduced by 1/3. So that's just my projection based on what the governor is saying, right? The Learning Recovery Block Grant is another fund that is part of this budget year that needs to be expended by 27-28. It's a significant amount of money for the elementary district, and it's really to address, it's very similar to the COVID funds. It's to address student learning recovery, right? And we have some plans for that in terms of how we might use some of that later on. And then down at the bottom is just the COVID total. COVID is a you know, a series of different pots of money. And you can see our total projected balance as of the 22-23 ending fund balance. So this is the balance that we're projecting to have, which is a little bit different than the balances that you see up above. And so so some of these grants are, you know, a grant should fund its program and the program should stay within the confines of the grant. But when we're talking about the Learning Recovery Block Grant and the Arts, Music, Instructional Materials Block Grant and the COVID, we've talked about this before, where we've got right now about a $2 million commitment of actions and staffing related, mainly staffing that's related to addressing the needs after the pandemic. And in order to maintain that $2 million commitment and get as much out of those people for our students as we can, this is sort of a rough sketch of how we could expend the remainder of the COVID dollars in elementary, supporting those staff, and then start to dip into the other block grants to get us another couple of years of that staffing. And so it's just, we've talked about this a little bit before at first interim and probably at budget adoption, but that's how we're thinking about that one-time money, is how do we get the most out of it while we have it, knowing that when it goes away, we're going to have some challenging and difficult conversations about the staff the auxiliary and support staff that is
I have a
provided.
question about this slide and the previous one.
Yeah.
The previous one, the balance of the end of the year, or at this point, is 3.9 million. And then if you go to the next slide, you're talking about 8 million.
Well, that's because, we're using, the 3.8 million kind of covers 22-23 and most of 23-24. And then we need to start bringing in, so you're correct, you're
either double
24-25, I need to pull the COVID out of there and start dipping into the other block grants.
Okay.
You're right.
Well, I'm not quite sure, there's some data missing here, some numbers missing here. And then we have the previous, ARPA fund, all the other funds too. So that may have been spent down, but.
You mean the previous COVID funds?
The previous COVID funds.
Yeah, this is
what's left.
This is what, by the end of the year, we're gonna be at about 3.8 million.
From all the
I get
ESSER
that. I
funds.
just felt like there was more money that we were looking at and other aspect, but we spent, you see, I'm worried about leaving stuff on the table, so, but your sense is that we're on good track to spend all of our money.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, we were looking at those timelines pretty carefully and making sure that we are expending the funds that sunset. The first funds in COVID are gonna sunset in September of 24. And so we're making sure that we're on track to spend those down and then starting to dip into the other one.
Another year and a half.
Yeah.
So there's another 4 million somewhere that isn't shown on this chart. Tonight to show on
It's
the next.
the 1.7 from the Art, Music, Instructional Materials Block Grant and the Learning Recovery Block Grant are what I'm referencing on this slide when I get into
Got it.
24, 25 and 25, 26.
Okay.
We're starting to use those funds. So that is confusing. So my apologies there.
But Bob, if you go back, how much COVID funds we've spent, like what, 5 or 6 or more, way more
And
so over the last 2 years, 3 years.
Thank you.
Since receiving them.
yeah, the total COVID funds that we received was like 17 million.
So
we're
we're
getting
seeing
down.
kind of a snapshot in progress. But
Yeah.
we haven't seen really an end of how we actually spent all that funding. So,
Yeah, Bob has that.
yeah.
That might
Yeah,
be
I've
a good
reported it a
feature.
couple times, but I think it might
Yeah.
be time for an update.
Maybe-
An update would be
Yeah,
good.
maybe just historical of how that funding, what it was used for, just to remind everyone what all the ESSER funds, there were 3 different pots, they all had different purposes, they all have different rules.
And PS, it's very likely that the House of Representatives Education Workforce Committee is likely to be investigating how COVID funding was used in education. It's one of the lines of inquiry that is likely to happen. So this is something that not that we're gonna be testifying, but it is something that is good for us to.
Yeah, I mean, I could pull it up now, but now's not the time.
No,
But,
a future report.
yeah, and that we are required to report periodically how we're spending these funds, and so there have been situations where I have gone back and forth with the CDE, getting their approval for the expenditure of those funds in certain ways, right? So that is an ongoing process, and I'm pretty sure we're not doing anything we shouldn't be doing. Okay, so just moving into the high school district, there's a lot more grants. This is a lot to try to take in visually. Some of them are similar. One highlight there, the community schools planning grant is actually it actually covers 2 districts. And so, but it's in the grant went to the high school district, but it actually should also have a reflection in the elementary district, but that's not where the grant funds came to. So that's why you don't see it in the elementary district. And so you might want to take some time at a future date and just sort of look at where where we have funds left and what some of the timelines of those are. I think having maybe a future presentation related to how each of these specific grants and how they're being expended is something that we could get into, but it would be a lot for a presentation. So we may need to prioritize that. And you can see down at the bottom there, similar thing, the arts, music, instructional materials block grant, the learning recovery block grant, and then the total COVID dollars. So high school received much less COVID dollars than the elementary. That's why you see the balance at the end of this 22-23 year being just under $1 million that we have left to spend. The Marin Health and Human Services grant is a three-year grant. It was a planning year and then $400,000 a year for 3 years. So
It's the wellness center.
it's the wellness centers.
I mean, I can't get through all of them, but you've already gone through most of them. Can you just tell us what those are, like the CTEG and some of those other ones are?
Yeah, so CTIG there's a series of rounds of CTE or career technical education funding that we get, and that funds some sections at our high schools, some CTE sections. It funds part of an administrator who is helping to oversee some of that work. And it funds some professional development for the CTE teachers. Strong Workforce and CTIG are sort of partners in that. So those are both CTE. Anything else you want me to highlight, Jim, that you see there?
What's A to G LLM, learning loss mitigation fund?
That was a smaller sort of COVID bucket. It's A through G learning loss mitigation fund. So it was a specific resource that was supposed to address any gaps in A through G completion that were a result of the pandemic. And I don't know, maybe Tyler can speak to exactly, although it looks like we haven't touched that this year yet. So I'm sure there's some plans for that in the future. And similar to the elementary district, the high school district, just figuring out how do we maintain the staffing that we've added through COVID resources. And that is to start to tap into those big grants that we have to carry that out to the 25-26 school year. So we're not wanting to add anything new. We want to maintain the extra staff that we've added and the extra programs that we've added for as long as we can to get the biggest impact to our students.
Well, and we might also want to think about how we're phasing out of the mental health industry and into the other kind of programs that give joy to kids
That's right.
apart than getting counseling. So maybe we won't need so much counseling, 2 years out, but we could use 400,000 for sports.
For sports, that's right.
Or for, we'll have music and art coming in, so sports is the one that we could really make a difference from our TK on up, so.
Accessible to all.
It's accessible to all.
Accessible to all, absolutely.
No, this is just a slide that.
I think this is what prompted me to think of that.
Yeah.
Because all the specialties on the left is where can we start phasing? I mean, we need them now, that's what we hear, and we may need them next year, but we're not in this industry for forever, so.
I think that's part of the
Soccer for all.
challenging conversations that we're gonna have about what priorities do we build sustainability in and what are the kinds of things that we're okay to let go, and that's gonna be hard.
That was gonna be my question is how are we gonna do that? Think of our priorities, because we have what, 2 years?
Yeah.
We should
Start now.
We have about
Now.
2 years left of funding.
Because I
No,
mean,
but you've got till 25, 26. is
Yeah.
what Bob's saying. We can,
Okay,
if we
so
choose
three
to,
years.
we can.
Yeah.
exactly.
3 years.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know what to that.
Like family engagement support, that's a big one.
Well, it's like
That
a
needs
learning
to be
recovery
taken
block.
care of.
All of them are important,
All of them, yeah.
but we have to prioritize the board. We have another choice.
Yeah. The learning recovery, yeah.
We don't have another choice.
That's all I got.
Okay.
Awesome.
It sounds like we've all said, I'm gonna open it up for public comment, either in the room or online.
It's great.
Any additional questions, comments from the board about this? Thank you, Bob. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of things to track.
Yeah.
It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of reporting.
Sure.
What?
I do have a question.
Oh,
President
please,
Dana.
please,
No, I'm
yes.
sorry, I just came
Go
talking
ahead.
about tracking, because, but I
Yeah,
don't want to
yeah.
interrupt your train
No,
of
go
thought, because
ahead.
maybe you and I are going through the same issues, like, because when we have grants, we have to draft reports, we have to draft all of this. How are you feeling around capacity? I mean,
And it's administrative burden.
it's an administrative burden for you, so I also want us, we have to take care of our staff, and I think, Bob, I mean, it shows through all the conversation we have since the beginning, that there's a big burden for you and for your team to get through all of it, so I just wanna put it out there and talk to, tell the superintendent that having additional dollars requires
So much
tons-
reporting.
so much reporting and narrative, financial, and tracking, deadlines. When do you report what? And I think it's a lot for you. So I just put it out there to the universe, addressing that, and I don't know how we solve that, but maybe there's some of the shifts that we have to think about.
I'll tag on to that. So what I'm seeing in other public agencies
Yes.
is they're hiring staff to help, temporary
Yes.
staff.
Yeah.
Through temp agencies to help with the tracking for
Yeah.
a few years, Or
Thank
maybe
you.
we hire a temp.
Maybe hire a
It
temp.
is a lot.
It's a lot, Bob, and I wanna acknowledge that, because
It's
it's not easy, and you have so many priorities on your plate that.
And you still look good, so.
So.
That's my first priority.
Yeah.
Well, I will say that bringing Ty Lowe onto
Yeah.
the team
Yeah.
is, I mean, having some stability in that position
Will be
is gonna make a big impact, because it is a lot, and it's a lot for, when I talk with CBOs or that have been doing this for years and years, they're challenged by it, so I don't even really know any different in this position, but.
This shouldn't be, it doesn't have to be like this. I mean, we manage, there's people here, we manage stuff like this, and we know what the infrastructure is required. And so we really can, support, if you need to expand some of this capacity, I think we'll be supportive of having that conversation, because we know it takes a lot. Yeah.
I'll just add one final thing
Yeah.
before we move on, and that's that because of all the administrative burden that comes from going after grants, I think we have to be really strategic about the size of grant offsetting the administrative burden it causes.
Yeah.
So we can't chase any dollar, not every grant is made equal. And so because of that burden, we should be thinking very strategically, which I know you already are.
It's a lot of work.
Okay, moving on to our consent agenda. Staff has asked to pull item number 13. Are there any others that need to be pulled from the consent agenda?
I'd like to pull number 1,
Okay, pulling number 1. Anything else that needs to be pulled?
move the balance.
Trustee Jackson, we're pulling items 13 and 1. Trustee Jackson has moved the balance. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Vice President Martel Dow has seconded. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The balance, absent numbers 1 and 13 has been moved and passed.
I
Trustee
pulled number 1
Jackson.
for a very simple reason, because I was not here for the first item, so I have to abstain from that one. So I'll let someone else move that one.
Would anybody like to move item number 1?
I move item.
Trustee Martine has a motion to move item number 1. Do I have a second? Trustee Palma has seconded. All those in favor of approving item number 1 on the consent agenda, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed and abstaining.
1 abstention. Thank you.
Abstention from
On the
Trustee
minutes
Jackson.
for December 12th.
Okay, we are about to adjourn into closed session. Before we do, I would like to take a second to honor the victims of the tragedy in Monterey Park, California. Obviously, it's Lunar New Year.
Sorry.
Yes. 11 people lost their life in what appears to be a racist motivated act, and 9 other people were injured. Unfortunately, this is in a series of anti-Asian American Pacific Islander attacks that we've seen an increase in the previous years. Thoughts and prayers are not enough. We need to be getting serious about making sure that our communities are safe. And in my mind, this is me speaking for myself, that includes gun control.